Dear chosen ones, you've been quiet for a while now, haven't you? Not because you had nothing to say, but because you knew they no longer deserved access to your voice. And yet, in that silence, something unexpected happened. The same mouths that once mocked you have gone dry. The same hands that tried to strangle your destiny are now choking on your stillness. Isn't it poetic? They did everything, lied on your name, twisted your truth, manipulated your kindness, and plotted behind your back. They threw dirt, spread rumors, and tried to break you from every angle. But in all their schemes, they never considered one thing: that silence from a chosen one isn't surrender, it's strategy. Before we go any further, I want to give heartfelt thanks to everyone who has supported this mission with a super thanks. Your generosity doesn't go unnoticed. It's not just a donation, it's a declaration. It tells the spiritual realm you're standing in agreement with this message. It fuels the mission to wake up other chosen ones across the world. Every time you give, you help push truth into the hands of those who need it most. Thank you for being a part of this divine assignment. Now, if you know deep in your spirit that this message is for you, don't scroll past without sealing it. Drop 777 in the comments right now, not just as a number, but as a signal, a spiritual confirmation that you're locked in, that you're ready, that you understand. This isn't just about revenge, it's about revelation. This is your confirmation that you're not crazy, not overreacting, and not alone. The silence you gave them, it was holy. The peace you protected, it was prophetic. And now their karma is preaching louder than any words you could have said. So if this message is already hitting your spirit like truth wrapped in fire, stay with me. We're about to break down exactly why life is tearing them up, piece by piece, and why the get back didn't come from your hands, but God's. Let's get into it. God's chosen ones. Life is tearing them apart. They can't handle the payback. Number 1. The obsession that backfired. Now they're drowning in the fallout. Chosen one, do you realize just how powerful your silence was? Do you know what kind of ripple it sent into the spirit realm when you refused to lower yourself to their level? They made you their obsession, not their rival, their obsession. You weren't just someone they disliked. You became their full-time assignment. Your name lived rent-free in their minds. They studied your every move. They talked about you in circles where you hadn't even stepped foot. They spread lies with conviction, hoping repetition would turn fiction into fact. But how do you cancel someone God already anointed? How do you bury a seed that was planted in divine soil? While you were up late praying, they were up late plotting. While you were fasting, they were gossiping. While you were building, they were busy tearing at your image like hyenas, clawing at royalty. And yet you won. You didn't just survive their sabotage. You transcended it. You didn't just walk away unbothered. You walked away elevated. And now, life is tearing them apart, not because of revenge, but because the mirror of your success is too bright for their falsehood to survive. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment, you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. Let's go deeper. How many people formed alliances just to see you fail? How many late-night phone calls were made to warn others about you, just to get them to join the hate parade? How many lies were dressed in false concern? I'm just worried about them, they said while digging spiritual graves with every word. But here you are, rising like morning light. You were never fighting them. You were too busy becoming, and now they're suffocating on the very lies they told. Isn't it ironic? You ever notice how the same ones who cursed your name can't stop speaking it now? How they track your life like it's their job? How they pretend not to care? Yet, watch your stories. Check your updates. And gossip about your every move like you're the season finale of their favorite show. That's not hate. Chosen one, that's addiction. You're their unfinished business. But you finished healing. Let's bring it into focus. Consider Muhammad Ali, hated for his defiance, his boldness, his voice. They mocked him until history remembered him as the greatest, or Princess Diana, ridiculed and chased, only for the world to grieve her with reverence. Or Malcolm X, Nipsey Hussle, Tupac Shakur voices, once targeted, now immortal. What do they all have in common with you? They disturbed systems. They triggered shadows. And so do you. Are you starting to see why your mere presence stirs the room? Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Oh, Matthew 5:11, chosen one. Their obsession became their downfall. They put more effort into your downfall than their own development. And now, they're stuck in loops of jealousy, stuck in cycles of karma, stuck watching your rise with nothing to show for all their slander. The more they tried to break you, the more God built you. Every betrayal, a promotion, every rumor, a setup for a testimony, every curse, reversed violently. Do you know why they couldn't handle your elevation? Because it held up a mirror. You didn't have to expose them. Your growth did. You didn't have to fight them. Your favor embarrassed them. And now they're collapsing under the weight of their own performance. Isn't that justice? You ever wonder why you never had to fight back? Why every time you chose silence over spite, things seemed to work themselves out in your favor? Because your battle wasn't in the physical. It was spiritual. You weren't fighting with fists. You were fighting with favor. And favor always finishes what flesh cannot. That's why your peace irritates their demons. That's why your presence rattles their illusions. You don't even have to speak. You walk in, and their guilt activates. That's the cost of being marked by God. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus Petanasudis. Let me ask you this. Have you realized how many people betrayed you not because you failed, but because you didn't? Why do you think they suddenly turned cold when you started glowing up? Why did their tone shift when your spirit began to rise? Because your light made their masks melt. Because you chose purpose over pettiness. Because you were never meant to blend in. Think about Tyler Perry, once homeless, mocked, and misunderstood, now building empires on land he once slept on. Or Oprah Winfrey, fired from her first job, called unfit for television, now a billionaire media icon. Or Nelson Mandela, who forgave the very ones who jailed him and emerged not broken, but legendary. They all rose from the grave. Others dug, just like you. They can't understand it. Chosen one. How did you make it with nothing but faith? How did you rise with no support? No backup. No validation, just favor. That's what terrifies them. Not just your success, but how unstoppable it was. You didn't steal, cheat, or scheme. You waited, you trusted, you walked with God, and now they're watching the throne God built for you. Knowing they don't have access, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. I'm Psalm 23:5. Don't forget this. The same people who tried to break your soul are now haunted by your strength. They sit in rooms full of people they conspired with, and none of them can fix what's unraveling. They're choking on the same gossip that once fed them. Why? Because your elevation became their exposure. Your peace became their torment. Your glow became their judgment. And here's the divine irony. Their attacks didn't destroy you. They trained you. You learned boundaries. You discovered your power. You activated your calling. Their war taught you how to win without even picking up a weapon. And now, their obsession is the very reason they're drowning in their own chaos. That's not revenge. That's realignment. That's divine balance at work. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Galatians 6:7. So what now? Do you go back and explain yourself? Do you try to make them understand what they refused to see the first time? No, you owe them nothing. Not clarity, not closure, not access. The only thing you owe them now is distance. Let them feel what it's like to be locked out of what they tried to sabotage. Let them watch from afar as you sit at the table, heaven built for you. And if they're still watching, let them. That's part of the price for touching the anointed. The get back. It's not yours to execute. It's already happening. Life itself is doing the talking. Their downfall is echoing your name. Their confusion is preaching your testimony. And your silence, it's louder than any curse ever spoken. Chosen one. Stay focused. Stay elevated. Let their obsession become the very storm that God uses to promote you higher. Because the truth is simple. What they meant for harm, God used as your launching pad. Number 2. The spiritual law they forgot, and now it's too late to undo. Chosen one. Have you ever sat in silence, wondering if those who hurt you would ever feel what you felt? Have you ever looked back at the sleepless nights, the betrayal, the smirks, the gossip, and asked God, will they ever understand what they did to me? The answer is already unfolding before your eyes. The law they forgot, the law that governs realms both seen and unseen, it never forgets. The moment they thought they had escaped accountability was the very moment judgment started forming silently in the background. Why? Because spiritual law doesn't move when you clap back. It moves when you don't. They underestimated you because you didn't retaliate. They mistook your mercy for weakness, but they failed to recognize what they were really touching. Wasn't just a person, it was a divine assignment, a chosen vessel. And that's a mistake the universe never overlooks. Have you noticed how their life has started unraveling? How confusion follows them like a shadow? How their joy seems counterfeit? No matter how loud they laugh online, that's not coincidence. That's the law of return. They called it karma. The Bible calls it reaping and sowing. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Of Galatians 6:8. Let's talk plainly. They sowed betrayal and expected peace. They planted curses and hoped to reap applause. But chosen one, tell me, can you bury someone under lies and expect to harvest truth? Can you make someone cry behind closed doors and expect to be celebrated in public? They forgot that the universe keeps score. And God audits every heart. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need to expose them. Their own energy became the weapon against them. Think of Bernie Madoff, who built his empire on deceit only for his legacy to collapse and his name to become synonymous with shame. Or Judas, who betrayed Jesus for silver, only to end up broken by guilt. Even Harvey Weinstein, once too powerful to be touched, now stripped of reputation and relevance. Why? Because you can't break people in private and expect peace in public. Everything hidden comes to light, especially when that light is divine. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17, Chosen one. Let me ask you, how many times did you hold your tongue when you could have destroyed their reputation with one sentence of truth? How many times did you pray instead of retaliating? And how many times did you weep, not because you were weak, but because you could feel the weight of being misunderstood? They mocked that. They laughed at your vulnerability. And now, their laughter has turned to sleeplessness. Their confidence has turned to paranoia. Their fake joy has turned to real fear. You ever wonder why certain people fall apart even when their life looks picture perfect on the outside? Why their money can't buy peace? Why their relationships crumble the moment they get close to someone new? That's not just life. That's spiritual debt coming due. And trust this, God collects with interest. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord. Unquote. Romans 12:19. Some of you still wonder, should I check on them? Should I forgive early? Should I reach out? But let me ask you this. Did they ever check on you when you cried yourself to sleep? Did they ever pause to see if their words were breaking your spirit? This isn't about bitterness. It's about boundaries. Their consequences aren't your burden. Don't confuse your healing heart with the responsibility to rescue someone from what they summoned themselves. Let me break it down even deeper. Every time they laughed at your struggle, the mirror recorded it. Every moment they hoped you would fail, the scale tipped. Every whisper against your name turned into bricks, building their own trap. And now, the storm they sent out has found its way back home, amplified. Think of Bill Cosby, once adored, now disgraced by the hidden sins he thought would never surface, or Elizabeth Holmes, who deceived millions in the name of progress, only to be swallowed by the very lies she spun. When you twist energy for evil, it always coils back. That's not karma. That's divine order. The Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. Aitin, Isaiah 30:18. They forgot the law, the one even demons fear, the one even principalities must obey, the law of balance, that every tear you cried, every wound you endured, every prayer you whispered in exhaustion, it was counted. Not 1 second of your pain was wasted. It was planted, and now the harvest is coming, not in revenge, but in restoration. You are being restored. Chosen one. While they are unraveling in the very net they set for you, how wild is it that some of them still blame others for their downfall, as if the seeds weren't in their own hands. They point fingers at their ex, their job, their bad luck, but deep down, they feel it. That suffocating pressure on their chest, that spiritual unease, that looming dread they can't shake no matter how many vacations or distractions they pile on. That's not anxiety. That's accountability. With the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. End of 1. Luke 6:38. Chosen one. You didn't fight fire with fire. You held your peace while they tried to drag your name through the mud. And now, without lifting a single finger, justice is serving itself cold, clear, and unrelenting. This is not petty. This is not vengeance. This is heaven enforcing order. And you don't even have to watch. You're not here to gloat. You're here to rise, to rebuild, to glow in silence, while the same people who laughed at your tears tremble in the ruins of their own actions. Let them sit in what they stirred. Let them learn what you already mastered, that peace is earned, and favor is sacred. Remember Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, falsely imprisoned, left for dead only to rise to second in command over Egypt. His very presence became their mirror. So will yours. Not because you fought them, but because you outlasted them. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. End. Psalm 34-17. So, chosen one, hold your head high. The scales are no longer tipping, they've slammed into alignment. What was done in the dark is screaming in daylight. And the names that cursed you, they echo with guilt. Not because you cast a spell, but because your light reveals everything they hoped would stay hidden. You don't owe them grace. You already gave it. You don't owe them explanation. Your elevation speaks louder. All you owe them now is distance holy. Untouchable. Divine distance. Because karma has turned, the mirror has spoken, and spiritual law has ruled. You win. Number 3. Karmic lover or silent enemy. They didn't just leave you. They exposed themselves. Chosen one. Have you ever felt haunted, not by what someone did to you, but by the fact that you felt it coming and loved them anyway? That gnawing unease in your spirit wasn't paranoia. It was prophecy. You sensed it. The subtle competition hidden behind their smile. The unspoken resentment when you were celebrated. The compliment with a hidden sting. They didn't betray you because you failed. They betrayed you because you were thriving in spaces they secretly believed belonged to them. This wasn't just a heartbreak. This was a spiritual ambush, masked as romance, friendship, or even family. Have you ever asked yourself why the betrayal felt deeper than usual? Why the pain hit your soul? Not just your emotions, because this wasn't just personal, it was spiritual warfare. These weren't random moments of disloyalty, these were karmic contracts, signed in silence, carried out in shadow. Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted his heel against me. Psalm 41-9. You tried to ignore it. You tried to rationalize it. Maybe they're just insecure. Maybe I'm overthinking. But deep down, you knew. That strange shift in their tone when you shared good news, that quiet withdrawal when doors opened for you, that sarcastic jab disguised as humor. Your soul recognized the danger, and yet you loved anyway. That's what makes you chosen. Your love wasn't weak. It was divine. You ever wonder why you keep attracting people who need healing? Why so many get close to you, but can't seem to hold on without eventually lashing out? It's not because you're broken, it's because your presence exposes what's buried inside others. And for those who aren't ready to face their reflection, that kind of light feels like an attack. Think of Amy Winehouse, whose fame was shadowed by those who loved her music, but not her soul. Or Princess Diana, who was adored publicly, but isolated privately by those closest to her. Or even Jesus himself, betrayed not by strangers, but by someone who walked with him daily. Your story isn't new. It's just spiritually complex. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Matthew 10:36. Let's talk about that karmic lover, the one who claimed they loved you, but always shrunk in your light. The one who said all the right things but never clapped when you won. You weren't in a relationship. You were in a soul contract that was destined to break open your destiny. They didn't love you for who you were. They loved how you loved them. Your loyalty, your healing energy, your ability to pour life into dead spaces. And what about the friend who always seemed supportive until you passed them? Until you started getting attention they thought belonged to them. Suddenly, they turned cold, distant, critical. You ever notice how they subtly tried to dim you? You've changed. Don't get too full of yourself. Don't forget where you came from. But what they were really saying was, stop outgrowing me. Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Matthew 7:15. You were surrounded by energy thieves, people who didn't need love, they needed access, and you gave it freely, because your heart doesn't come with walls. But here's the divine twist. Your light was the test. God allowed them to sit at your table, not for your downfall, but so their intentions could be revealed. And once they showed their hand, you didn't have to do anything. The illusion collapsed. The mask slipped. You didn't fight. You simply walked away. And that was the trigger. Your exit was louder than any argument. Your absence echoed through their soul louder than any accusation, because you were the blessing. Your presence had been holding back the storm in their life. And now that you're gone, the collapse has begun slow, painful, irreversible. Think about Chadwick Boseman, who carried his battles in silence, surrounded by critics who had no idea he was operating with divine purpose. Or Robin Williams, who lit the world while battling shadows no one could see. Both were reminders that the brightest souls are often misunderstood by those too dim to recognize what's in front of them. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Then, John 1-5. Have you ever asked yourself, what if I had stayed? Or, was it my fault they changed? But here's the truth. Chosen one, they didn't change. You just finally saw clearly. The veil lifted, and when it did, you saw what had always been true. They were jealous, not loyal, envious, not supportive, karmic, not divine. They were never on your level. They were simply passing through to fulfill their part in your awakening. So what now? Do you look back? Do you send a message? Do you try to explain your absence? No, because this is divine separation. This is spiritual pruning. And when God removes someone, He doesn't need your apology. He needs your alignment. What fellowship can light have with darkness? 2 Corinthians 6:14. And now they feel it. That glow they once mocked, it's too bright to bear. That grace they tried to copy, it won't work for them. That peace you carried into their chaos, it's gone, and now their house feels haunted. Their soul feels heavy. Their life feels misaligned. Why? Because you were the light source, and they mistook you for a backup generator. They're blaming bad energy, bad timing, toxic cycles. But deep down, they know the truth. You were the assignment. You were the protection, and your absence is the consequence. Their world is unraveling not because you cursed them, but because you stopped covering them. How many of your enemies were once people you loved deeply? How many of your spiritual battles were disguised as romantic relationships or lifelong friendships? How many times did God whisper, "Let go"? But you held on out of loyalty. Chosen one. That karmic tie is severed. That contract is fulfilled. And the scales are tipping back in your favor. Let them sit in the distance. Let them feel what it's like to be outside your energy field. Not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. Because you don't owe them an explanation. You already gave them grace. You gave them time. You gave them you. And now you give them silence. Because the spiritual law is working. The mirror has turned. And karma is a better teacher than your words ever could be. Number 4. The get back was spiritual, and that's why it hit different. Chosen one. Have you finally realized that your silence wasn't weakness, it was warfare? That your withdrawal wasn't retreat, it was realignment? They were expecting a dramatic showdown, They were prepared for chaos, ready for conflict. They were counting on you to break character, to fight fire with fire, to give them one last performance they could use to validate their betrayal. But instead, you walked away, quietly, elegantly, and that's when their whole plan crumbled. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need to raise your voice. Your exit was louder than any argument, and in that stillness, something ancient activated on your behalf. The get back didn't come in shouts, it came in silence. Have you ever wondered why their life began to unravel right after you left? Why their smile dimmed, their relationships faltered, and their confidence turned brittle? It's because you were never just a person in their life, you were spiritual covering. And when you left, divine order re-entered the room. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:12. They thought your glow-up would need announcement. They didn't realize the elevation would be so quiet, it echoed. Because when you're chosen, God doesn't send thunder, He sends transformation. And transformation doesn't scream, it just shines. What they called weakness was actually patience. What they mocked as silence was the pause before your promotion. You ever notice how those who tried to humiliate you in public suddenly look lost in private? Why their blessings dried up and their joy disappeared? That's not coincidence, it's consequence. Not from you, but from the throne that backs you. You weren't seeking revenge, you were aligning with divine rhythm. And in that alignment, the universe became your advocate. Your silence became strategy. Your healing became judgment. Think of Nelson Mandela, who sat in prison for 27 years, never cursing his oppressor's hand, returned not with vengeance, but with victory. Think of Michelle Obama, who was attacked mercilessly in the public eye, but never clapped back. Her excellence silenced them instead. Or Job, who lost everything while his friends judged him, only to be restored with double. What do they all have in common with you? They trusted the process of divine get-back. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Psalm 23:5. Chosen one. Can we go deeper? They thought this was personal. They thought your glow-up was spite. But this wasn't about ego. This was about spiritual law. The moment you stopped chasing explanations and started choosing peace, the scales tipped. God whispered, "Now that you've stepped aside, I'll handle the rest." And He did. The most terrifying thing about divine justice is that it needs no audience to be complete. While you were healing in private, their destruction was unfolding in public. Now their mouths, once used to curse you, can't form blessings. Their hands, once used to sabotage you, are shaking from the weight of their own karma. Their eyes, once rolling in envy, are forced to watch your ascension from the nosebleed section silent, bitter, and spiritually paralyzed. How poetic is that, beloved? Never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. Romans 12:19. Let me ask you something. How many people expected you to clap back and instead had to watch you glow up? How many waited for your breakdown, but witnessed your breakthrough instead? How many tried to bury you under shame, but only planted the seed of your next level? This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. And they can feel it. Oh, they feel it. They feel the silence you left behind, like an earthquake that won't end. They can't sleep, can't focus, can't fake the peace they once fed off of through your presence. They keep looking back, not because they miss you, but because their soul is restless in your absence. The same silence they tried to trap you in has become their own prison. Look at the life of Tina Turner. who walked away from abuse with nothing but her name and rebuilt an empire. Or Keanu Reeves, mocked for his silence, yet known for his depth, compassion, and enduring light. Or Joseph in Genesis, thrown into a pit by brothers, forgotten in prison, then elevated to rule a nation. Why? Because God always exalts the quiet ones when the time is right. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. James 4:10. Chosen one. Your silence wasn't void, it was strategy. Your walk away wasn't weakness, it was warfare. You didn't need to break them, you needed to release them, so heaven could finish what they started. Now look at you healed, glowing, aligned. You became the peace they tried to steal. You became the clarity they could never fake. You became the get back, not through vengeance, but through vibrancy. Now their blessings are blocked. Their fake image is cracking. Their new relationships are haunted by your memory, and they don't even know why they feel stuck. But you do, because you understand spiritual law. You understand that when a chosen one lets go, everything shifts. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. So, hear this clearly. You didn't win because you fought. You won because you trusted. You didn't conquer because you schemed. You conquered because you surrendered. That's divine authority. That's spiritual dominance. You weren't just chosen for peace, you became the evidence of it. And now, they're living in the very silence they once used to harm you. But here's the difference. You survived it. They won't. Let this be your reminder. Chosen one, stay elevated. Stay graceful. Let the universe do what it does best: balance. You don't need to defend your name. Your glow is the courtroom. Your favor is the verdict. Your peace is the punishment. And if they're still watching you from a distance, let them. They'll have front row seats to your next level. And this time, they won't even have the words to curse it. Because the get back was never yours to give. It was God's to execute. And He never misses. Number 5. When they wished for your fall and ended up digging their own. Chosen one. Have you ever walked into a room and felt a chill, not in temperature, but in spirit? Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and sensed that behind their smile lived a storm they secretly hoped would destroy you? That wasn't paranoia. That was discernment. You saw the truth before it unfolded. Because they didn't just dislike you. They wanted you removed, erased, silenced. You were a light they could never imitate. So they chose instead to curse it. Let's stop sugarcoating this. They wished you would fall. Some wanted your influence gone. Some hoped for your health to fail. Others whispered to the darkness, hoping the universe would end you physically, emotionally, spiritually. They may not have spoken it aloud, but their spirit screamed destruction. Their jealousy fermented into hatred, and hatred doesn't stay quiet. It becomes a prayer, a contract, a spiritual assault. They repay me evil for good, and hatred for my love. But I am a man of prayer. Psalm 109:5. You ever wonder why you were suddenly overwhelmed with fatigue? Why shadows followed you even in the daylight? Why anxiety clung to your chest like a stone? That wasn't random. That was an attack. Spiritual violence disguised as misfortune. You weren't just surviving gossip. You were surviving soul-level warfare. They sent death energy toward a vessel marked for life. But instead of ending you, it awakened something ancient, something they couldn't understand and would never survive. Because when death is sent toward a chosen one, it doesn't find a victim, it hits a firewall of divine power. That energy doesn't dissipate. It returns. It circles. It searches for another home. And where does it go? Back to the sender. Every evil wish, every whisper of, "I hope they fail," every thought soaked in envy, it all comes back with interest. And now, the grave they dug is open. But it's calling their name. Think of Jeanne d'Arc, burned for being chosen, yet remembered as a saint while her accusers were forgotten in disgrace. Or Martin Luther King Jr., targeted for daring to dream, but the dream outlived his enemies. Or Maya Angelou, who was silenced by trauma and abuse, but later became a global voice for truth. You walk in that lineage. They wished for your fall, and instead, they witnessed your resurrection. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done. And Genesis 50:20. Let's go deeper. The weight you carried in secret, that wasn't weakness. That was you absorbing and surviving a war others would have never endured. You didn't know at the time, but you were walking through an exorcism of the energy they sent. Their curses landed like bricks on your shoulders. But here's the miracle. You survived. You kept showing up. You kept rising. And now, every dark force they unleashed is dining at their own table. Have you noticed the shift? Their eyes don't shine like they used to. Their joy feels hollow. They're surrounded by people, but they're spiritually suffocating. Why? Because you were their spiritual lifeline, and they tried to cut the cord. You were the light they envied, the covering they betrayed. And now, the silence they cast over you has wrapped itself around their own necks. The pit they dug for me, they have fallen into themselves. 1 Psalm 57:6. They walk through their homes, feeling watched. They wake up with dread they can't name. They avoid mirrors because reflections now speak louder than voices. That's not coincidence. That's consequence. That's the universe honoring the contract they signed with their own mouth. They may blame stress, or bad luck, or spiritual confusion. But deep down they know. They remember what they wished for. They remember the energy they weaponized. And that awareness is haunting them. Let's talk about your silence. The real reason they can't sleep. You didn't argue. You didn't confront. You didn't even post. You just walked away. You leveled up in peace. And that quiet was louder than any scream. Your glow replaced your retaliation. And that's what undid them, because their power depended on your reaction, and you refused to give it. Be still before the Lord, and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. End of Psalm 37:7. Look at Tyler Perry, once homeless and ridiculed, now a billionaire with his own studio lot. Or Nick Vujicic, born without limbs, once bullied and mocked, now a global preacher of hope. Or Malala Yousafzai, shot for speaking truth, but survived to win a Nobel Prize. The grave never worked. It only exposed how chosen they really were, just like you, chosen one. Stop asking, why did they do that to me? And start declaring, they did it because they knew who I was. You were a threat, not because you hurt them, but because you lived free without needing their approval. You ascended without their validation. You dared to glow where they only knew darkness. Now, their breath is short, their nights are long, their blessings are blocked, and their spirit is drenched in the very poison they prepared for you. It's not karma, it's divine reversal. You're not watching their fall out of vengeance, you're watching it as a living witness to spiritual justice. They will come at you one way, but flee from you 7 ways. In Deuteronomy 28:7, chosen one. Stand in your truth. You were never weak, you were just heavily targeted. And now, you're untouchable. Because you didn't fight back, you outlasted. You didn't curse, you elevated. You didn't break, you became unbreakable. So when you hear the rumors of their breakdown, when you see the distant, hollow stares, when their name comes up in stories of regret, remember this: you didn't send destruction their way. You simply refused to stay. And that alone, your absence, your elevation, your peace was the most powerful judgment of all. Let them feel the silence. Let them face the grave they crafted. And you, keep rising, because what they meant for your death became your divine awakening. Number 6. Self-destruction disguised as bad luck, but God calls it justice. Chosen one. Have you ever seen someone who once laughed at your pain now drowning in their own confusion, and wondered why everything in their life is collapsing at once? Have you noticed how their glow dimmed the moment you walked away? How their blessings started drying up after they mistreated you? They'll never say it aloud. But what they're experiencing isn't a rough season. It's not a run of bad luck. It's not the devil attacking them. It's spiritual accountability disguised as misfortune. They're not victims of coincidence. They're experiencing the collapse they authored. This isn't random. This is what happens when you tamper with a divine blueprint that isn't yours to edit. Every betrayal they launched, every lie they told, every manipulation they smiled, through it was like drilling holes in their own boat and blaming the waves for the sinking. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. That Galatians 6:7. You ever wonder why they always seem to be in some kind of crisis now? Why they're under attack from all sides, even though no one is coming for them? Why people are backing away? Deals are falling through, and relationships are crumbling. That's not misfortune, it's spiritual cause and effect. They became the saboteur. They were the attacker, dressed in victim's clothing, and now the poison they stirred for you has begun leaking into every area of their life. Remember how they once paraded your pain like it was a trophy. They mocked your breakdowns. They laughed with others about how they played you. They wore your suffering like a badge of superiority. I broke them. They begged me to stay. They'll never bounce back. But chosen one, what they didn't realize is that your comeback was already prophesied, and their collapse, it was inevitable. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. Psalm 9:16. Let's talk real life. Think of Bernie Madoff, who swindled millions and died in prison, alone and disgraced. Or Harvey Weinstein, once feared, now a cautionary tale of abuse and downfall. Or even Saul from the Bible, once chosen, but lost everything when he chose jealousy over obedience and warred against David. They all have one thing in common with those who betrayed you. They thought their power would protect them from the consequences of their actions. But spiritual law is impartial, and that's what they forgot. They thought they won. They thought they hurt you and walked away clean. But what they never accounted for was the delay of divine judgment. God doesn't always strike immediately. Sometimes he waits until they've built their entire house on lies, then lets the truth blow it down in a single breath. That's what's happening now. Have you noticed their energy feels different? Their eyes look hollow, their words seem forced. That's the unraveling. They call it burnout. They call it depression. But really, it's the spiritual storm they summoned now roaring at their own doorstep. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. I, Isaiah 30:18. And you, chosen one, you didn't fight, you didn't slander, you didn't seek revenge. You simply walked away peacefully, prayerfully, with integrity, and your absence was the trigger. Because what they didn't understand is that you were the covering, you were the blessing, you were the light that made their chaos bearable. Now they're lighting sage in panic, paying for spiritual cleansings, blaming Mercury retrograde, searching astrology charts for answers. But the truth is, it's not the cosmos, it's consequences. They call it energy imbalance. But it's not imbalance, it's return. You gave them your time, your love, your loyalty, your peace. They squandered it, disrespected it. And now the universe is reclaiming every drop, not just what they took from you, but interest. Think of Princess Diana, manipulated and emotionally abandoned, but in the end, remembered with love, while her betrayers were shrouded in shame. Or Fred Hampton, assassinated for leading in righteousness, yet today, honored as a revolutionary. Their lives echo this truth. You can't kill what God crowns. You can't destroy what heaven defends. Touch not my anointed, and do my prophets no harm. 1 Chronicles 6:22. And here's what stings most for them. They now see that your glow was never luck. It was grace. Your strength wasn't arrogance. It was anointing. Your presence wasn't replaceable. It was spiritual provision. The moment they mishandled you, they severed their own lifeline. And every door that's closing on them now, that's not a coincidence. That's clarity from heaven. Now they call everyone, except the one they offended. They cry to people, but they won't repent to God. They say, "Why is this happening to me?" But deep in the night, their soul already knows. They're not cursed. They're just uncovered. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Proverbs 26:27. Chosen one. I know it's tempting to feel pity, to think, maybe I should have stayed. Maybe I was too cold. Maybe they didn't mean it. But let me ask you this. Did they pause when they hurt you? Did they hesitate when they turned your love into a weapon? Did they flinch when they smiled at your tears? No, they didn't. And that silence, their silence while you suffer, is why the storm now sings their name. You didn't cause their fall. They did. You were their refuge. And they burned it down with their own hands. What they're going through now isn't punishment. It's proof that heaven is just, that spiritual law works, that God is watching. So let them blame the stars. Let them post quotes about spiritual awakening. Let them rewrite the narrative to cast themselves as the victim. But the truth can't be edited. You were the light they betrayed. And now the darkness is calling back everything they summoned. When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers. End point. Proverbs 21:15. So keep shining, keep healing, keep walking forward, and let their destruction unfold without your participation. You don't need to say a word. The universe already delivered the message. This isn't bad luck. This is divine accounting. And the storm has only just begun. Number 7. Mental collapse. The silent breakdown. They can't escape. Chosen one. Have you ever watched someone who once mocked your pain start to unravel slowly, quietly, and without explanation? Have you noticed how the ones who once laughed the loudest now barely speak above a whisper? The truth is simple yet powerful. You didn't have to lift a hand to destroy them. Their reflection did the work. They were never at war with you. They were at war with the truth. And you? You were simply the mirror. The moment you stood firm, chose a peace, and refused to carry their projections, the collapse began, because the version of themselves they tried to bury has now come back to confront them without mercy, without pause, without escape. The wicked flee though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. May. Proverbs 28:1. Let's call it what it is, a mental and spiritual unraveling. They thought they could offload their guilt onto you, that by blaming you for everything they hated about themselves, they'd find peace. But peace doesn't live in projection. Peace lives in accountability. And now that they can't pin their darkness on you anymore, they're stuck staring into their own abyss. You ever wonder why you used to feel that strange heaviness out of nowhere? Why your chest would tighten, your mind would spiral, and your energy felt hijacked? That wasn't your depression. That wasn't your anxiety. That was their energy seeping into your field because you were spiritually absorbing the very torment they refused to face. But then you healed. You woke up. You separated. And now the weight has returned to its rightful owner. Cast your cares on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. End of Psalm 55:22. Now they're trapped in a cycle with no exit. They used to manipulate the narrative, control the gossip, twist the truth. But now, their own mind has turned against them. There are no more distractions strong enough to muffle the guilt. No more parties, lovers, vacations, or screens to drown out the internal echo, because silence is no longer it's a courtroom, and their conscience is the judge. Think of Howard Hughes, once a billionaire genius, reduced to living in isolation, tormented by fears of contamination, broken by his own brilliance. Or Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, whose inner demons silenced his genius for decades. Or King Saul, who went mad chasing David, only to realize his downfall was self-inflicted. The common thread: they couldn't face themselves. And now, neither can the ones who tried to destroy you. There is no peace, says the Lord, for the wicked. Thus though, Isaiah 48:22, you didn't destroy them, you didn't expose them, you didn't curse them, you simply healed. You chose light over retaliation. You moved forward without needing applause. And in doing so, you shattered the narrative they depended on to play the victim. Your healing silenced their manipulation. Your peace exposed their inner war. Now every quiet room echoes with reminders of the lies they told. Every mirror reflects the face of someone who lost your favor. They wear smiles like makeup, but their soul is peeling beneath the surface. They post about blessings, but live in emotional drought. They talk about moving on, but your name is still tattooed in the back of their mind, and it burns every time they lie about what really happened. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. End of 2 Timothy Vianus. Septini, chosen one. Don't be fooled by their online presence or empty victories. The real story is written in the silence, the sleepless nights, the fake laughter, the missed opportunities, the shame that drips into their thoughts like a leak they can't fix. This isn't punishment from you. This is the aftershock of dishonor. They thought if they broke you, they'd rise. Instead, your elevation exposed how broken they already were. They said, "You'll never survive without me." But here you are, glowing, while they're curled up in mental corners, whispering apologies to themselves. They were too prideful to say to you, "Let's talk real-life examples again." Britney Spears, mocked and controlled, then mentally broken but eventually liberated while her abusers faced public shame, or Simone Biles, who stepped away from performance to protect her mind, revealing the mental toll of constant pressure and false narratives, and even Pontius Pilate, who washed his hands of Christ's blood, yet could never wash away the guilt. Self-inflicted torment always follows unjust action. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you. End. Isaiah 26:3. And what about you? You don't need to gloat. You don't need to prove anything. Your wholeness is the evidence. Your laughter is the judgment. You're not bitter, you're better. And that, above all, is what they can't endure. You ever ask yourself why their name no longer triggers you, but yours still stirs something in them? Why your silence feels louder than all their fake stories? Because you're the lesson they refuse to learn. And now, you're the freedom they can't imitate. They wear chains, they forged in arrogance, chains built with lies, ego, and spiritual negligence. So what now? Do you reach out? Do you offer grace again? Do you explain your absence one more time? No, because they're not confused. They're convicted. The collapse you're witnessing isn't bad luck. It's the final act of a play they wrote with your name in the script, but forgot you were the main character all along. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34-18. Chosen one. Hear this loud. You are not responsible for their collapse. You were the light they tried to dim, the mirror they tried to shatter, the soul they tried to infect with their own darkness, and now, the breakdown they hoped for you has become their reality. Quiet, constant, inescapable. You were never the destroyer. You were the revealer. And now that the truth has taken hold, the only thing left for them to face is the person they became when you stopped absorbing their storm. So, walk on unbothered, undefeated, untouchable. You survived the breakdown. They're still inside it. Number 8. You were the final test. Chosen ones. Sometimes a person doesn't realize they just failed the final exam of their spiritual life until heaven goes quiet. You weren't just another person passing through their timeline. You were their last divine opportunity. You were the final test before judgment. And it wasn't a test of intellect, charm, or ambition. It was a test of humility, of integrity, of heart. You were God's mercy wrapped in flesh. You showed them patience when they deserved silence. You gave them love when they sowed confusion. You extended forgiveness when others would have walked away. And how did they respond? With disrespect, with betrayal, with ego. Have you ever wondered why it all fell apart so quickly after they hurt you? Why the doors closed? Why their peace vanished? It wasn't just coincidence, it was consequence. You weren't just part of their story. You were the spiritual gate through which grace entered, and the moment they dishonored you, that gate slammed shut. Have they tried to pray but felt nothing? Tried to move forward but keep hitting wall after wall? That's not bad luck. That's the withdrawal of divine favor. Because when you dishonor a divine assignment, you forfeit the protection that came with it. What were the signs they ignored? The dreams that warned them, the gut feeling that told them you were sacred ground. They felt it. They knew you were different, but they thought they could handle holy fire like it was common. Have you ever seen someone play with their own deliverance and call it a joke? That's what they did. You weren't drama. You were deliverance. And they didn't just walk away, they rejected their rescue. Why do you think things are silent now? Why do you think the heavens don't respond to their cries? because the one sent to help them was you. They didn't just lose a person, they lost their final covering. Their soul knew it, even if their mouth denied it. And now, no matter how hard they try to rebuild, it all crumbles. Not because they're cursed, but because they touched what was sacred with dirty hands. This is not revenge. This is not punishment. This is spiritual law. You were the final test, and they failed, miserably. Number 9, don't you dare save them, chosen ones. You may feel your compassion stirring. You may feel a whisper in your soul saying, they need help. Maybe I should reach out. Maybe I should give them another chance. But hear this clearly, don't you dare save them. Because what's happening now is not tragedy, it's truth. And you are not God. You are not their savior. You are the mirror that showed them who they really were, and they shattered it. So let them sit in the shards. Have they come back crying, saying they've changed, telling you they finally understand that they were wrong all along? Be careful, because snakes also shed skin. That doesn't mean they've transformed it. Means they're trying to camouflage. What they miss isn't you. It's the protection you brought, the blessings you carried, the peace that flowed into their life just because you were near. You were the calm in their chaos. And now they're desperate to reclaim what they forfeited. But don't forget who they were when you needed them. Where were they when you cried, when you were broken, when you warned them and gave chance after chance? They mocked your softness. They fed off your suffering. Now that life is returning the energy, they want a shortcut back into your light. And here's the spiritual law you must never violate. If you interrupt their karma, you inherit it. Their burdens become your burdens. Their storm becomes your storm, and you'll find yourself drowning for someone who would have let you die. Why do you feel obligated to save someone who set fire to your soul? Why do you still want to rescue the one who tried to ruin you? That's not your heart speaking. That's a trauma echo, a leftover survival instinct. But your healing can't coexist with their manipulation. This is not your test. It's theirs. And if they pass, that's between them and God. But if you interfere, you delay your own blessing, because God will not elevate you while you're holding on to someone He removed for a reason. So let them break. Let them cry. Let them sit in the silence they created. You owe them nothing, not closure, not kindness, not comfort. Because when you were the blessing, they spit on it. When you were the warmth, they walked out into the cold. And now, the cold has entered them. This is not cruelty, it's correction. Spiritual law demands that what is dishonored be removed. When they mocked your pain, did they hesitate? When they slandered your name, did they weep with regret? Or did they enjoy it, revel in it, post about it? You are not required to carry the weight of someone else's downfall. You are required to remember your worth. You were not their punishment. You were their protection. And once they desecrated the gift was withdrawn. Let them miss you. Let them talk. Let them spiral. But don't go back. Your job was to offer light. They chose darkness. That is not your failure. It's their final exam. And they failed. Number 10. Even the children were targeted. God's chosen one. There's a reason heaven trembles when innocence is harmed, because purity is not just protected, it is defended with fire. And when someone targets the innocent, especially the children, they trigger a divine wrath that doesn't just echo, it shakes entire bloodlines. You may have wondered, how low can someone sink? How far into spiritual blindness must a soul fall to go after the defenseless? But now you see it. They didn't just attack you. They tried to poison the future by touching what was sacred to God. Have you ever asked, why would anyone come after something so pure? Because when the enemy can't stop you, they aim for who you love. Some of them didn't just speak against you, they whispered curses into your child's name. Some of them plotted with manipulation, using the youngest as pawns, and others, driven by jealousy, projected negativity over your legacy before it could even bloom. This isn't just betrayal. This is war against the divine. The Bible says in Matthew 18:6, "If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea." God does not play when it comes to the innocent, and now the consequences are eternal. The moment they crossed that line, they lost their final chance at mercy. Real-world examples echo this spiritual truth. Think of Princess Diana, who was fiercely protective of her children against both media and monarchy machinery. She became a global symbol of maternal love and shielding the innocent, yet those who tried to use her children to control or torment her faced disgrace and fallout that lingered for decades. Or Malala Yousafzai, targeted by extremists at the age of 15, just for advocating education for girls. Her attackers are now global villains, while she won the Nobel Peace Prize. Michael Jackson often spoke of his trauma from childhood abuse and how he vowed to shield his own kids from similar pain. Those who tried to weaponize his children after his death for gain saw reputations collapse. Serena Williams paused her legendary career for her daughter, and any who mocked her motherhood journey got publicly called out and condemned. Terry Crews, the actor and activist, has openly spoken of protecting his children from generational trauma and faced backlash for breaking silence, only to be vindicated later. So now the question returns to you. Do you realize how protected you are when your heart stays pure? Because the moment they dragged children into their bitterness, heaven's silence ended. Spiritual laws don't play favorites, they enforce justice. These people didn't just touch your future, they violated what heaven had marked as holy. That's why the consequences aren't minor, they're generational. Some of them are already seeing it. Relationships crumbling, strange illnesses rising, financial curses sticking, and lineage-wide misfortunes unfolding with no explanation. Psalm 127:3 says, "Children are a gift from the Lord, they are a reward from Him." So when that gift is attacked, what do you think heaven does? It responds like a lion whose cub has been touched. You might be tempted to ask, should I feel bad for them now? But chosen one, let that go. Let the divine handle it. You were already protected. But when they moved against the innocent, when they used spiritual manipulation to harm children or mock dreams not yet born, they didn't just curse themselves. They triggered a debt they can never repay. Now they're watching the slow unraveling. Job, opportunities vanish. Friendships decay. Mental health breaks down. Generational dreams dissolve into dust. The more they cling, the more they lose. That's not by accident. That's divine order, reclaiming what was never theirs to touch. Isaías 54:13. ESEB declares, "All your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. Their peace cannot be stolen. Their future cannot be cursed." Every dark word spoken over them is returning like a boomerang. Do you feel that? That's the power of divine reversal in motion. And what about you? Are you starting to see how strong you really are? You were chosen not just to survive, but to protect the next generation of light. You cried for them. You prayed over their names. You blocked out negativity. Even when you were breaking, you held on to the sacred. And heaven noticed. Proverbs 17:6 tells us, children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children. You are a crown bearer. You carry the divine responsibility of raising light in a dark world, and those who tried to interfere with that light, they are now facing a kind of silence they cannot scream out of. So, chosen one, don't look back. Don't plead for their mercy. The door of mercy was slammed shut the moment they touched what God treasures. What they planted in malice will harvest in suffering, not just in their lives, but through their bloodline, and the world will watch it unfold. Genesis 12:3 confirms, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. That promise doesn't stop with you. It extends through your children, your legacy, your future. You were always going to be protected, but once they targeted the innocent, they weren't just judged, they were doomed. Number 11. You paid in tears, they'll pay in silence. Chosen one. How many nights did you cry with no one knowing but God? How many times did you sit in a room full of people, feeling completely alone, pretending you were fine while your heart was breaking in places you didn't even know could break? They thought your tears were weakness, but what if your tears were actually your power being activated? What if every drop that fell was a seed being planted for divine vengeance? You see, the universe, and more importantly, the God who made you, does not overlook sacred tears. Psalm 56:8 says, You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. That means every moment you suffered in silence, heaven was taking notes. Every time you were mocked, abandoned, ridiculed, or betrayed, it wasn't lost. It was stored, and now the storage is full. Now the debt is due. They laughed while you bled. They celebrated while you crumbled. They pointed fingers and said, See, they're finished. But what they didn't know was that you weren't crying tears of defeat. You were releasing spiritual pressure. You were shedding what no longer belonged in your future. And all the while, they assumed silence meant they had won. Why do the wicked always misinterpret divine restraint as divine absence? Let's talk about what happens next. You paid in tears now. They pay in silence. But not the peaceful kind of silence. No. This silence is different. It's the kind that gnaws at the soul. It's the kind that replays every act of cruelty in their minds. Every time they kicked you when you were down. Now the silence becomes their prison, haunted by the very moments they thought were victories. Consider the story of Princess Diana, hounded by media, ridiculed by the royal system, emotionally isolated, and yet she never lashed out with vengeance. She wept in silence. But when the world finally saw her truth, it changed global attitudes forever. Her tears left a legacy, and those who wronged her were left in silence and scrutiny. Or think of Malala Yousafzai, a young girl who was targeted for seeking education. She was silenced by a bullet, but she rose not with anger, but with strength. Her tears birthed a movement, and those who tried to silence her now live in the shame of global judgment, their hatred echoing back on them. Chosen one. Can you see the pattern? You're not the first to cry sacred tears, and you won't be the last whose silence becomes a weapon of justice. Ecclesiastes 3:7 says there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. It was spiritual warfare in disguise. Because while you were quiet, God was speaking. While you wept, angels were writing. While they gloated, The heavens were planning, and now your enemies find themselves in a chamber of echo, haunted by memories of their own wickedness. Have you noticed they've gone quiet lately? Do they look a little less bold? A little more anxious? A little lost? That's not your imagination. That's the reversal. That's the divine silence falling on them like a weight. Actor Brendan Fraser comes to mind. After his career was derailed by betrayal, harassment, and mistreatment in silence, he vanished. But when God brought him back, it wasn't through anger, it was through honor. He rose with grace. And the ones who blacklisted him, now they sit in silence, watching the world embrace what they tried to erase. You cried for the version of yourself you had to bury, the pure part of you that still believed in them, the loyal part of you that loved them anyway, the hopeful part of you that just wanted peace. You cried for that version because it died so you could live. And now that you've been reborn, stronger, wiser, more anointed, they must now sit with the ghost of the person they betrayed. Isaiah 25:8 promises this. He will wipe away every tear from all faces. He will remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. The Lord has spoken. So if God is the one who collects the tears, what happens when he cashes them in? What happens when he turns sorrow into sentences and pain into prophecy? The answer is silence. The kind that surrounds their fake celebrations, the kind that poisons their fake relationships. They may still be achieving, but none of it feels right. Why? Because success gained through betrayal always tastes bitter. Ask Lance Armstrong. For years he was a hero, a champion. But once the truth came out, even his victories felt hollow. His silence is now louder than any of his medals. This is what happens when you mess with a chosen one. You think you've won because they didn't fight back, but in reality, you triggered a judgment you can't outrun. The silence they left you in will now be their torment. And even worse, they'll see you shining. They'll see you glowing, elevated, empowered. And the silence of your success will be louder than any speech you could ever give. Romans 12:19 says it best. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay," says the Lord. And now that payment has begun. It may not be public, it may not be dramatic, but it will be devastating. Because nothing eats the soul like silence when you know you caused your own downfall. Reflect on the journey of Meghan Markle, ridiculed, rejected, and alienated by the very family that welcomed her. She cried, privately, but she walked away with dignity. Now, while her critics fumble in silence, she lives freely, joyfully, surrounded by love and watched by a world that sees the truth now. So I ask you, chosen one, were your tears really a weakness, or were they the holy currency that bought your next elevation? Was your silence a sign of defeat, a declaration of divine strategy? They thought you were crying alone, but God was there, watching, counting, keeping score. And now, they too have been silenced, not to reflect, not to heal, but to face the haunting music of what they did. Let them sit in it. You cried your way to power. Now let their silence remind them of everything they lost. Number 12. Let the universe finish what it started. Chosen one. When you chose to walk away instead of retaliate, you activated a power greater than any vengeance you could have ever planned. What do you do when justice doesn't come fast enough? How do you move forward when your heart still aches for closure? These were the questions you wrestled with in silence, not because you were weak, but because you were transforming. You didn't just walk away in pain, you walked away in purpose. You released the rope they were still tugging, and in doing so, you freed yourself while tying their hands with divine judgment. You've cried behind doors no one even knew existed. You screamed into pillows. You begged heaven for answers. And yet, even when nothing made sense, you still held your ground. Can you see now that your restraint was the final test before the release? You didn't just want revenge, you wanted meaning. And in that space, God moved, not because you fought back, but because you let go. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus petansi fortans. You see, the universe was never blind to what happened to you. It simply waited for the moment when your spirit no longer clung to pain, because as long as you were tangled in the need to prove something to them, you were still tied to their energy. But now, that cord has been cut, and as soon as it was, the consequences began. Let me ask you, have you noticed it? Their confusion, their instability, the things they once boasted about now falling apart behind closed doors. That's not coincidence. That's correction. The spiritual scales are tipping, not by your hand, but by a divine hand far more precise. Look at the story of Malala Yousafzai. Shot for standing up for education, she didn't retaliate. She rose in truth and let the world and history finish the fight for her. Or consider Nelson Mandela, who walked out of prison not seeking blood, but peace. His power was not in retaliation, but in silent resolve. This is the kind of spirit you're being called to carry now, because your elevation is happening not in chaos, but in calm. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:21. Some people only understand destruction. That's why their karma isn't loud, it's slow, rotting what they once idolized, disturbing the sleep they once boasted about. Have you seen how some of them can't sit still anymore? How their energy seems unsettled, even in victory? That's the consequence of mishandling the sacred. You weren't just a person to them. You were an answered prayer, a divine encounter, and they treated you like an option. But what happens when you disrespect a gift from God? What happens when you throw away someone who was sent as a blessing? You lose more than the person, you lose the covering that came with them. That's what's happening now. And the scariest part? They know it. It is a dreadful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Hebrews 10:31. They're waking up with regret in their bones. They're replaying every word they used to cut you, every lie they told, every betrayal they laughed about. But there is no more room for apology now. That season is over. You don't owe them healing. You don't owe them explanation. You owe yourself everything you were once giving away for free. Take Princess Diana as another example. When the media and palace forces tried to strip her dignity, she didn't scream back. She walked in grace. And the world remembered her not for her pain, but for her poise. The very people who tried to silence her created a legacy they now can't erase, just like yours is being written. Not with revenge, but with resilience. Have you ever thought about this? Why do they suddenly seem so obsessed with peace now? Why are they posting about healing and growth after ignoring yours? Because they're being taught through the same silence they once mocked. You see, when you stayed silent, they assumed you were weak. But God was preparing a stage, not one built on noise, but one built on honor. The spotlight is now turning slowly but surely, and they can't look away. What was once their game is now their reflection. What they meant to destroy you has only revealed them. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Proverbs 26:27. Even Fred Hampton, the revolutionary leader of the Black Panthers, understood the power of standing for truth without compromising soul. His enemies tried to silence him violently, but his voice echoes through time louder than ever. You don't need noise to be powerful. You just need alignment. So now, you let go. Fully. Not halfway. Not let go but still watching. No, you let go like someone who knows the truth is no longer yours to speak. It's theirs to discover in their own ruin. The same way you once wept in private, they'll unravel in the shadows. But this time, you don't wait for the news. You focus forward, pour your love into yourself. Rebuild your joy. Give your energy only to what brings light. Remember what Chadwick Boseman did in silence, fighting cancer privately while showing up in strength publicly. Some battles are sacred, and yours is finally over. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. Let the universe finish what it started. Chosen one. Let karma do the teaching. You never could. Don't look back. Don't try to explain. Don't try to save them. You already offered them grace, and they spit on it. Now, the silence will do the speaking, and the pain they once wished on you will echo through every decision they make. Now they're forced to respect your absence, but more than that, they're haunted by it. You didn't walk away because you were weak. You walked away because the divine had already made its final decision. The get back, it's already complete, not by your hands, but by heaven's hands. And as this chapter comes to a close, let these final words be sealed in your spirit. Chosen one, you were never the villain. You were the test, the light, the wake-up call, the unraveling of their illusion. Their downfall isn't your responsibility. That's their karma, and it's unfolding quietly, slowly, inevitably. From this moment on, you no longer carry that weight. You don't owe them your voice. You don't owe them forgiveness out of pity. You don't owe them closure when they never gave you honesty. What you owe now is to yourself. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself joy. You owe yourself the full return of every ounce of love you gave to people who weren't built to hold it. So hold your peace now. Guard your glow like sacred treasure, and never, ever apologize for the favor on your life. That grace has a purpose. That oil has a name, and no smear campaign can touch what God has declared over you. Let go, not for them, for you. Let go because the future calling you doesn't speak the same language as the past, trying to keep you small. Let go because silence is sometimes the most divine response. Let go because you already won the moment you chose your soul over your ego. You don't need to prove anything anymore. Your life is proof enough. You didn't break. You became. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Thank you for listening, for reflecting, for sitting with your pain and still finding the courage to keep going. Thank you for being a part of this growing community, whether you've been quietly watching or actively commenting. Your presence matters more than you know. If this message stirred something in your spirit and you feel led to support the mission, you can do so by clicking the Super Thanks button. Your support helps these messages reach more people who desperately need to remember who they are. But even if you don't give anything, please know your energy, your attention, your presence are deeply appreciated. Every watch, every quiet tear, every silent nod of agreement, every whispered Amen, it all matters. You are not invisible here. You are not forgotten. You are part of something sacred. And now, I bless you. May God cover you and keep you. May His light shine upon your path and give you peace that surpasses all understanding. May He increase you in wisdom, strength, and divine confidence. May He raise you in front of those who tried to bury you. And may He give you the kind of peace that makes those who betrayed you stop and realize exactly who you were this whole time. You are not just chosen, you are anointed, protected, and unstoppable. If this word awakens something inside of you, share it with another chosen one who needs to remember their truth. We still have a mission ahead, and the world is waiting for us to rise. Your absence now speaks louder than their noise ever did, and that is your power.